Good afternoon, everyone. We'll have talk about the DevOps, ITSM, and how some of these things bring together. There's a standard disclaimer slide. For most part, we are going to talk about what exists in the products. So there are all kind of statistics around how much current the DevOps is, how much every organization is getting into it. But one of the examples that I have in my mind that strikes me is 3 years back I was talking to one of our customers. They have one of the big remedy implementation, fairly customized, and when they were actually promoting changes, simple change like field property changes, they used to take 3 months. And the reason for them was they had customize it, but more importantly, there are a lot of people changes over the time. So they were not sure if any small change will have some other impact to it, right? So they were like no, we are kind of we'll hold that change for as far as possible, because their consumers internally, they kind of keep cribbing about how slow the changes are getting into the system. So that's like 3 years back. We spoke to them less than 2 months back. Abhijit, me were on that call with customer. Now they're saying that hey, there is a big push in the organization for doing some of those DevOps things. We want to get our changes promoted faster, and we want to learn it from you guys. As a BMC, you're building this tool. It's pretty much similar to how they have customized it. You're building it at a larger scale. How can we learn it from BMC, right? So those are the conversations which are happening more often now, that their ecosystem customers partner want to learn from BMC as what are some of the tools, technologies that we use in the tool. At the same time, there is also a desire to understand what is it that BMC or the ITSM solution is really helping with the overall, the broader DevOps. It's not about just the remedy, managing the remedy application and the DevOps activities, but how ITSM solution, be it remedy ITSM on-prem or in the Helix ITSM in cloud, how actually it is going to support the organization-wide DevOps goals that we have, right? So there are multiple ways to really look at it. If you look at some of other competitive players, what they are trying to do is hey, we have the best of the breed platform. We can actually create a bug tracking application for you. We can do XYZ in our platform, right? But what we felt is really we want to allow you and your teams to continue to use those best of the breed tools that you are already using, right? So for example, if your teams are familiar with Jira as the requirement tool, or as a defect tracking tool or issue management tool, we don't want to disrupt it, saying that you build another one in the remedy application. You pretty much continue using it. We'll have ways of integration or working with that tool, right? So that's more of our philosophy of how we want to build or support your broader DevOps activities in the organization. So that's kind of one differentiating factor, that we don't want to boil the ocean when you want to use you want to continue to use your ITSM for operations need. We don't want the other dev people to come and start using ITSM tools just for getting success with the DevOps, right? That's one of the key thing that you would see when Peter will talk about the use cases. When we talk about today's presentation, we have kind of broadly kept it two distinct parts to it, right? The first part is how internally BMC development team, engineering team is actually embracing the DevOps, right? So what are the kind of the tools, technologies that we internally use to get there, right? You have seen our Helix solution is a classic example of how we are able to get those releases faster. How do you able to get some of those newer versions to you faster? So what is it that we internally do? For SaaS customer, this is like what happens in the behind the scene, right? Before you see the movie, there is like that's a 2-hour movie, but there is a lot that goes 2-hour movie created. So that's like you just kind of understand what's there. But more importantly, if you're running it on-prem, then you'll learn some of the tools that we use, the process that we have, and maybe that could be an inspiration for you for looking at the DevOps adoption. Again, this may not be a question for you today, but I'm sure based on the customer interaction, we have seen that this is coming far often what they want to learn from us. The second part is more about, Peter is going to talk about is, the use cases, right? And this is where it gets interesting because by and large, when people talk about, the ITIL, there is kind of perception in your mind that, the ITIL or, the best of the process-oriented tool may not support the DevOps because, DevOps comes with, other philosophy. So let me talk about, the tools part of it. So this is more of a developer view, what we have when it comes to, building our application. So if you look at, there are user-facing services like, we have Remedy, SSO, reporting, mid-tier. Then we have, the server component. Like this is the core bunch of, the code that we have for actually writing the application. The AR server, all of those components within it. Then the application layer that we have, which is ITSM applications, which are using the server to build that application logic there. So ITSM, CMDB, SRM, SLM, and then there's the integration framework, right? So from a developer perspective, when you're delivering the solution, you have all of this kind of coded, the entire testing, automation, everything covers all of this spectrum, right? So today's discussion, we are more focused on the Remedy ITSM, Helix ITSM, but by and large, this is what also holds true for other product. There are some variations. For example, if you look at Helix platform or Innovation Suite platform, then they might have slight variations because their tools and technologies or their deliverables are more confined to SaaS, so they have slight variation. Now, if I take this classic the DevOps thing, and if I map some of the tools that we use internally, so we use like some things like for the front end we have the Angular, for the back end or the core engine we have. For most part we are already on Java. There are few elements of C code that we have. So probably most of you would know that Remedy 9 when we released for the first time, that was the big transformation we moved from C to Java. That's like the big thing. So we are already out there. When we talk about the packaging, we have primarily three deliverables now. One is installer, that probably you have seen it over the years. That's like one of the key things that we deliver for customers to install it on-prem. We have the Docker. This is very specific to our SaaS, where we actually build the Docker containers and give it to our SaaS team, where they will deploy it using the likes of the Kubernetes OpenShift in our SaaS infrastructure. And then the D2P, that's more for the metadata. So again, I'm going to go a little deep on the topic of D2P. So deployment management application allows you to take all of your application constructs from a server to other server, right? So you have a console where you can build in the development environment. You can actually build your all customization. Let's say ITSM customization. You can make a package of it. You can take that package to other the QA environment or production environment. You import that content, and it will get you all the related the def ARX and all the content there, right? So you don't need actually system level access. All of the things are available on ITSM, particularly the mid-tier UI, that console is accessible. So that helps you with the package. In fact, when we talk about the D2P, that is also our standard way for delivering patches. So if you are on a version anything greater than 18.05, the patches, the hotfixes are actually built using the D2P. Okay. For that matter, if you upgrade your ITSM to a version later than 18.05, that is going to be available not through the installer but only through the D2P package, right? So that's a D2P that we have kind of started using. It's mostly for all of your ITSM thing, but also it can be used for the binary changes. When we talk about the automation, we use the JUnit mostly for the unit testing, but we also have the UI automation using Selenium. Source code, again, we have multiple of those technologies. Some places we use the Puffos, some places we use the Git, and then Jenkins is more of our orchestrator layer, which does all of those automation. It will kind of run the process. I have a slide towards the end which talks about all the things that Jenkins manages. And then we have some of the other things as well. Right. So that's about the just kind of background as what tools that we are talking about that we use internally. This is a CI pipeline, and again we are talking about 3 key artifacts there. We talked about the container Docker images. We talked about the D2P package. DB image is more for any schema changes that we have done. So we'll have the database image also as another deliverable. So Jenkins will take care. In fact, I'm going to actually split this entire CI into 2 slides. Okay, the first slide is more for the binary related changes. So consider this as when you're doing the plugin development, right? So if you have a plugin that you've developed, this is what is relevant for you, where you're doing the code level changes. And the next I'll talk about the ITSM app level changes, which is any customizations that you're doing, right? So when we talk about the binary pipeline, the way it works for us is we have either Perforce or Git based on some of the model. Once the developer checks into that, Jenkins will check out that code. He will actually build it. The build will be created, and then we have this team city build is successful. Then we'll have the 2 artifacts coming from there. So one is the installer. This is for the on-prem, so we'll have the installers going out on the APD. Customers can use those for installer upgrade, or for our SaaS business, as I said, we use the Docker's containers, and that's where the containers will be built and it will be pushed into Docker registry. And once the there is a Docker registry out there, then there is additional flow, which is more on the operation side. They have other set of validations for the new binaries which are shipped. So that was binary. As I said, that's more relevant if you're writing the custom plugins or any kind of code level changes. The other is application changes, right? This is all about, let's say you have a custom application that you have built, then how do you manage the code? So what we do internally is our development team will actually, so we have 2 servers here. So you have the application collab server, and then we have the master server. So collab server is where every developer will check in their code, and then selectively we will actually push that code into master server. And this master server is where we will actually the Perforce, from here it will be structured into the Perforce repository, and then the similar process kicks in where Jenkins will check it out, make a build, and then we have the staging and the release process. Now, one thing that we do typically is we have a lot of those stacks to take care, right? So for the on-prem customers, we have a lot of those combinations. So we have the multiple OS, we have 2 databases. In fact, with 1908 we'll have in fact 3 databases. We have added support for Postgres. So all of those combinations will go through testing. So this is where some of the test automation comes in, where we'll use a combination of this database, like you can see the Windows SQL, Linux Oracle, and then fresh and upgrade, right? So fresh scenario, if someone is going with 1908 fresh, then we'll test those scenarios, and the other is upgrade scenario, if customers are upgrading from a version to 1908. So those are the combinations that we will have for validating the new build that we have. And not only that, the automation will actually create some the results of automation are stored in our internal custom AR app called as AutoDB. And so every run that we have for this testing, the different combination, the results of those get pushed into AutoDB, and then AutoDB QA team will look at the reports from AutoDB to see which of these stacks were successful. If not successful, what went wrong, and then they will file an internal defect so that dev teams look at it, right? So that's the kind of flow for application related changes. Now, how many of you actually know that we have released this test automation? Mostly the UI automation libraries. Anyone who has used it? Okay, good to know. So we had in fact quite a few people on this community responded with some good comments about this library. So this is something we internally use. We have also released it for you, mostly on the UI automation, where you can actually use those automation framework and start testing it, right? Because I'm sure the way we do the testing, you'll also have some amount of testing before you upgrade a version. And is there an opportunity for you to automate that testing every time you upgrade a version? You can very well start using our framework as a base, and maybe you'll add your some variants or some specific use case for it. So this is all available on this. In fact, was released a year and a half back, so it's available. There is a new version also we added some time back. This is just a snapshot of what all testing stacks that we do. Like we do the full stack upgrade for the similar combination, like the different OSDB, different fresh versus upgrade scenarios. And this is the CD part. So we talked about the CI part, which was the application and binaries, two flows I talked about. This is more of continuous deployment part. There are 4 distinct phases in my view. The first phase is more about what R&D does within their group, right? So if there is a the, let's say, AR server group which is working on it, they will deploy it. They will actually do some of the testing within that group. They have some automation that works, and once they are ready with that kind of the build, there is again a similar job that will run and push it into solution QA environment, right? So what is solution QA environment? Solution QA environment is more about getting different components or solutions that we have, and we run it, the entire end-to-end testing there, right? So for example, we'll have remedy, ITSM there, we'll have discovery there, we'll have CMDB there, we'll have TrueSight product there, and then we have select use cases that will run in this environment. So remedies is another one, right? So that helps us to uncover some of those solution consistency or solution level use cases. Things might be working in silos, but if things have any impact on the solution use case, there is an opportunity for us to test it and discover it here. Again, very similar flow. So we'll do the upgrade. We'll have multiple flows for upgrade and fresh install that we'll do. Another one at CSL, right? So this is customer solution lab. So what we have seen is, while sometimes it works great in our lab, it doesn't may not work in the same in your environment, right? And based on some of the feedback, we actually work with some of the customers like you, and took your data, took some of your environment variables, and we have mimicked that in our R&D labs. So that when the product or the build is ready, we also push it into the CSL lab. So we have some X number of environments for different customers of different size, different application, the combinations, and we push it into the CSL lab, test it there, and that kind of helps us to get to the next level where we push it into our the Docker. Again, this is more specific to the SaaS business, but consider this the final one as your production versus this is a non-product your QA environment, right? So once our CSL solution QA CSL is succeeded, it goes to the QA environment where there are another set of test cases automation run. There is when the SaaS teams takes it over, they also have their own set of test cases that they will run. Most of those are automated that they will use for testing. And then finally it goes from staging environment to the production environment, where we pretty much follow the same process. There is additional thing which is we will have the change management process, so that we will notify customers upfront saying that this is a window for we are going to use for promoting your environment from X version to 1908, and based on their consensus, we'll then upgrade their production environment to the new version. So that's kind of in a nutshell the flow for CD continuous development process that we have been following. So this is a final snapshot on the Jenkins pipeline that we have. So multiple pipelines we have. Something is upgrade, preparation, pre-upgrade, then the upgrade that we do. There are multiple steps that you can see. Jenkins does all of the orchestration in between these steps. I'm going to stop here. I'll invite Peter to talk about the other part, which is more about the use cases and how we help customers with this.
Thanks, Rahul. So again, what we wanted to show in that first part is really how you can deploy DevOps principles to the Remedy software itself, right, and highly automate the test and deployment processes, right? Why is that important? Because in the end, within your companies, right, people will expect that all the solutions follow these kind of automation principles, right? Otherwise, it's always a big risk. People will say, oh, this is outdated, right? Don't use it anymore, right? As an enterprise solution, you have to play by the modern rules of DevOps. It's extremely important. And as you can see, it's perfectly possible to follow a fully automated CI/CD pipeline, test automation. You can do everything you can do with a modern web app, right? You can do with our Remedy solution, and we do it internally, right? So it's again important to realize that as you are thinking about your own deployment processes inside the company, think about how you can take some of these ideas and apply it inside the company, because it will extremely help with the credibility of the solution, right? So that's why it's important. We didn't want to go into all the nitty-gritty detail there, right? And it's not a one prescriptive approach, right? Every company has their own tools, etc. But I think it's extremely important to realize how important it is to apply them, right? So that's number one. Again, the other part is more about, independent of the Remedy software. In general, when you have an organization that thinks about DevOps and how the processes are changing in IT, or when you adopt DevOps, either partially or completely, right? There's a lot of discussion about, what role does ITSM play then, right? And there's sometimes black and white opinions about it, right? Some people say, oh, if I go down the DevOps route, I don't need any IT service manager at all anymore, right? Or other people say, oh, I have to align with what DevOps means, or I have to integrate. And for me, it's not about tool integration, it's not about a black and white. Ultimately what counts is, there's value in IT service management and the principle of managing IT infrastructure as a service, right? Even if you follow DevOps principles and you go down that route, there's still value in what ITSM does. But sometimes you have to adjust it a little bit, right? Because there's certain principles in DevOps, the fact that you have independent product teams, the fact that it's more collaborative, right? Sometimes you have to adjust your ITSM processes a little bit to align better with that DevOps philosophy. And that's really what we want to enable with customers, right? So as you or somebody in your company starts thinking about following more a DevOps approach, we want to make sure that our tool can support this new way of working, right? That's what it boils down to, right? And again, I've seen a range of, individual product teams. They're kind of aligning with the DevOps principle to, the entire IT organization is reorganized, and now, they're called tribes and product teams, etc., right? You see every range, but the important part is, again, whether the company is a part or a hybrid or is a full DevOps aligned company, you can use our ITSM software to basically run ITSM processes, but aligned with these DevOps principles, right? That's the key part, right? And a lot of times, again, people try to make this a tool integration discussion, right? Can you integrate Jira with ITSM? I don't think that's the right way of thinking about it. It's also not about, hey, we just have to do what the DevOps team says. That's also not what it's about, right? Ultimately, it's about what value can a solution like Helix ITSM deliver, or Remedy ITSM on-premise, deliver for customers and for teams that follow this DevOps approach, right? And we see value in 4 areas, right? One is, if again, you're a team that follows DevOps, you have to run super fast, it's all about rapid innovation. It's even more important to get an easy access to IT services, right? Easy access to new machines, easy access to new storage, etc. And that's where this kind of self-service with high degree of automation becomes even more important, right? It's in general interesting for any IT organization, but for a DevOps team, it's even more important to get quick access to resources, right? Secondly, there's a lot of information in the ITSM solution that DevOps tools don't have, right? understanding the entire IT landscape based on what you have discovered, understanding how infrastructure contributes to a service. There's a lot of that is not available in a tool like Jira or others, right? So there's helpful information and context that a ITSM tool can give to these DevOps teams, right? Then when it comes to customer support, again, very often the discussion starts with my product team or my DevOps team. I just give everybody a pager, right, or a notification tool, right, and then they have to be on call during the night. That works if you're a startup, but if you're a large-scale enterprise, it doesn't work that well anymore. So we help companies organize their customer support in a way that kind of aligns well with DevOps principles, right? And that's why we have started investing more into supporting a swarming approach as one of the key principles, right? And then last but not least, often the most important discussion is how can you align the change process that has traditionally been established in the ITSM world with the rapid innovation that people want to have if they follow a DevOps approach, right? How can you increase the velocity ultimately without jeopardizing the kind of risk assessment, etc., right? So these again are the 4 areas, right? And we do deliver value today in each of these areas. Mentioned a few of these items, and we continue to build this out, right? In the end, it's best if you can confidently articulate what value an ITSM solution brings towards these, DevOps-centric teams, right? Eventually, again, they will all run into these support challenges, etc. And then, you can say, look, we can help you guys. We know how to organize support, etc., right? That's what it boils down to, right? So I want to touch quickly on all those 4 areas, but we wanted to kind of showcase both sides of the DevOps picture. On the one hand, how you can apply it to the remedy software itself and the solution, right? And then on the other hand, how you organize your ITSM processes, right? So again, the first part is supporting IT services. Again, there's a number of use cases around self-service where you can say, hey, we have the tools that enable DevOps teams to very quickly ask for additional IT resources or services, right? Whether it's spinning up new compute infrastructure or microservices, it doesn't really matter, right? You can use the self-service. It's a very established approach for us, right? But again, there's no good equivalent here in the DevOps world. The other thing is Contextual Inside. Again, what we collect with discovery today, really a reflection of the real-life environment, is of tremendous value to these teams, right? And again, discovery is just an example, right? Think about, okay, what customers do you have? How happy they are. I mean, all of that information is available in an ITSM solution, but not easily accessible to developers. And it's helpful context for them, right? Now again, when it comes to support capabilities, in general, when you look at how DevOps teams work, they are more likely to leverage third-party services. Again, for them, it's all about agility and running fast, and therefore they are not doing everything in-house. They're often using cloud infrastructure, other SaaS services, right? And once you do that for your solution, for your product, as they often call it, right, then you need to be able to forward support issues to the external vendor, right? And that's why our multi-cloud service management solution comes into play, right? So you get a support issue, an incident, but again, as a DevOps team, you very often have third-party vendors or providers involved in the solution. You're able to automatically broker that out to different vendors, right, with our multi-cloud service management solution. So again, one of the values that we provide here. Again, that's the provider part. I mean, ticket consolidation the other way around is also possible, but again, in most cases, because DevOps teams often are more likely to work with external vendors, right? That's probably the most important use case here, right? And then same for self-service defect intake, right? So again, if you have a self-service solution, which we offer as part of an ITSM suite, right? You can let the consumers of a service report issues with the service, and they can directly be integrated with Jira or other defect tracking systems that the customer may use in order to kind of see what the customers are struggling with, right? So it's kind of a direct connection to the defect tracking system without having to go through support, right? You can, of course, also submit an issue within the service desk, and then the service desk basically files a corresponding defect in the tool, but you can shortcut it here with a self-service kind of approach. Right? Again, as I mentioned on the support side, here we talk mostly around swarming, which is again a new approach for organizing your service desk activity that is more aligned with principles of a DevOps and Agile environment, right? It's less about a hierarchical, single direction forwarding of tickets, so to speak. It's more a collaborative approach. And for many organizations that, again, are more organized around Agile and DevOps Principles, this is a better fitting support model, right? Again, we continue to support the old model as well, just to be clear, right? It's not about all jumping onto the new bandwagon, but we want to make sure that if innovative new processes kind of emerge, that we support companies both with the old and the new, right, as they make the transition between these two, right? And again, within the tool, we support this kind of swarming approach by providing this in our own, chat-based solution. So you can use this collaboration tool to swarm with multiple people, right? Or now in the latest release, 1908, we also support this for collaboration with MS Teams, right? So you can use your enterprise third-party collaboration tool like Microsoft Teams to collaborate and then basically reach out to the ITSM system, right, in support of such a swarming use case, right? Last but not least, again, the most common one is this high change velocity goal, right? The value that we provide for companies in supporting deployment of changes in a faster and more reliable way. A key part here, again, is multi-cloud service management that allows you to transfer user stories that have been created in the development tool, whether it's, again, Azure DevOps or Jira, whatever you use, right? You can correspondingly create change requests in the ITSM world automatically. So that's out-of-the-box capability. We support different types of use cases, and again, it supports a high-velocity environment because not every change has to go through a full CAP meeting, risk analysis, right? You can, for many changes, just log the change in the ITSM world. And then, if it's a low-risk change, basically, the deployment can happen fully automatically, but you still have a track record. In case something goes wrong, the support has a list of changes that have been deployed, etc., right? So on the one hand, the automation and the fact that you can create this with a low risk allows the change to fully flow through without any kind of hold up, right? On the other hand, for those areas where you want to have some control and risk assessment, it's possible to do that as well. And that's really the holy grail that a lot of companies are looking at right now, is how can you calculate the proper risk level when you do this kind of automated integration, right? So one approach is, for example, to look at in the existing ITSM database with all the changes that you have, right? You can identify which teams, for example, have deployed changes and no outages were caused by it, right? Or no major incidents, right? So some teams have a clear track record, right? They did a lot of deployments, a lot of changes, nothing ever happened, right? Those teams you should let go through pretty seamlessly, right? Without a lot of hold up, right? Because they have a proven track record. On the other hand, if you have a team that has great changes and there were outages caused afterwards, right? Maybe it's a good idea to put a little bit of control around it, right? So based on the historic data of the teams, maybe you want to put the risk level differently. Of course, you also need to look at things like, what impact does the system have? If you change something in your core, I don't know, your core accounting system or in your core business system, and any outage would have a major impact on your business, maybe it is still a good idea, even if the team has a good track record, to do some control around it. In some areas like healthcare, it's even mandated that you have some kind of risk assessment around it and manual oversight. So it's all about the intelligence that you put in here, and ultimately it'll likely be driven by multiple risk factors, right? Including, did you do a security assessment? What are the test automation results? I mean, multiple factors can go into it, and then you calculate a realistic risk score. But that's really the kind of holy grail to accurately identify what the risk is, and basically then drive the automation part based on that risk assessment, right? Everything that's a low risk should go through automatically, right? There should be no rule that says every change has to go through a CAT meeting or require an approval, right? You want the high velocity, but those things that are important to be looked at manually, they should be looked at manually, right? And so we have this kind of risk assessment today as part of that Jira integration, and we continue to fine tune it, right? We want to make sure that, as companies build out this integration, that they can do this risk assessment intelligently. So that was really kind of an overview, again, how we look at our ITSM processes, so to speak, and helping companies that are embarking on this DevOps kind of reorganization. We think there's a lot of value in it. It's not a black and white picture, either DevOps or ITSM, right? It's really about how can those two principles work well together, right? And we deliver adjustments to our standard ITSM capabilities to make sure they work well with these DevOps teams, right? Okay. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.